The woman bit down hard on her wrist, tearing it open, and allowed her blood to drip into a metal container. The blood flowed through a mechanism and into the body of a long-dead corpse. In the next moment, the organs of the corpse began to revive, and the heart that had been asleep for centuries started to beat once more. Then, the corpse's eyes opened cold, hollow eyes. It was Viktor, one of the ancient vampire elders. However, for Viktor to fully regain his strength, this small amount of blood was far from enough. So, Selene brought more blood bags, but Viktor, now awake, was not pleased. The vampire coven had always been ruled by 3 elders in turn, maintaining a balance of power. At the moment, Amelia was in charge, and Viktor was supposed to be in a dormant state, but Selene had awakened him prematurely. This was an unprecedented situation in 14 centuries. Selene knew that she was violating their laws, but the situation was dire. The werewolf leader, Lucian, was still alive. At the mention of his name, Viktor's eyes flickered. Vampires and werewolves had been mortal enemies since the beginning, and their 2 races had been at war for centuries. But 600 years ago, in a great battle, the werewolf leader Lucian was killed, and the werewolf army was shattered in a single night. To ensure that no threat remained, the vampires sent a team of death dealers to wipe out the remaining werewolves. However, just a few days ago, while Selene led her team on a mission, things went awry. Their target this time was 2 werewolves. Just as the vampire team was about to strike, Werewolf Reyes suddenly sensed something was wrong. He smelled vampire blood in the air and immediately drew his gun, firing without hesitation. The vampire tried to dodge, but another werewolf hit him. Strangely, the bullet emitted a blue glow as it burned through the vampire's body, reducing him to ashes. Furious, Selene grabbed her gun and opened fire on the werewolf. The bullets were specially made to target werewolves' highly concentrated silver, capable of stopping their transformations but not killing them instantly, unless they were shot repeatedly. After a fierce gunfight, only 2 vampires and 2 werewolves remained. Seeing the situation turning against them, the werewolves panicked and fled, forcing Selene and her companion to split up. Her companion tackled Reyes and pushed him onto the railway tracks, but Reyes quickly grabbed him by the neck, throwing the vampire aside. Reyes' eyes turned silver gray. He was about to transform. The vampire tried to put on a brave front, but the next moment, Reyes ended him. Selene tracked the blood trail left by the werewolves and found herself at a hidden sewer entrance. Without hesitation, she opened the door and jumped down. In the unfamiliar territory, Selene remained alert at all times. Suddenly, a werewolf launched a surprise attack from behind, but Selene reacted quickly, swiftly turning and taking him down. She moved forward to ensure the werewolf was finished off with another shot. Then, she noticed the werewolf's handgun. Remembering the strange death of her companion, Selene decided to take the gun back for examination. Suddenly, a roar echoed from above. Reyes, having finished his fight, had caught up. Selene immediately turned, pulling out 4 silver-throwing knives. The blades spread in mid-air, each hitting its target with precision. Taking advantage of Reyes' temporary paralysis, Selene sprinted deeper into the tunnel, only to find herself in the midst of a werewolf gathering. There were at least 100 of them. Judging by the sounds, she considered staying to investigate further, but Reyes' growl echoed behind her again. Reluctantly, Selene had to retreat. As she left, the howls of the werewolves grew louder, their cheers rising in intensity. They were engaged in a vicious battle, their claws sharp, attacking each other with a bloodlust that wouldn't be satisfied until they smelled blood. Suddenly, the sound of a gunshot shattered the noise. The werewolves stopped, their eyes filled with awe as they stared at the figure who had appeared. The young werewolves were too intimidated to make eye contact, and that figure was none other than Lucian, the werewolf leader. Not only was he alive, but he had been lurking in the shadows, plotting a grand scheme. Back at the ancient castle, Selene wasted no time. She went straight to the scientist Khan and asked him to analyze the werewolf's handgun. After examining it, Khan confirmed that the bullet casings were filled with ultraviolet light, vampire's greatest weakness. Even the weakest exposure to UV could turn them to ashes, let alone a weapon designed for it. One shot could be fatal, but how could the werewolves have such technology? And after 600 years, there had been no sign of werewolf gatherings. Something was definitely brewing. Selene suggested that Craven send a team to thoroughly investigate the sewer tunnels. Craven, the second in command of the coven, was handling the family's internal affairs while the ruling elder Amelia was away. However, Craven didn't believe Selene. For centuries, the werewolves had been nearly wiped out. There was no way they could be gathering again. Selene must have misheard or misinterpreted the situation. Still, to be cautious, Craven agreed to send some of his trusted men to check. Selene was not pleased with Craven's leadership. She saw him as a coward, a pleasure seeker who never truly cared about the safety of their family. Determined to find the truth herself, she decided to investigate further. She enlarged the photos her companion had taken of the werewolves and discovered something odd. The werewolves were tracking a human. Selene couldn't understand what a mere human could have to do with the werewolves. Craven, seeing Selene absorbed in her work, grew irritated. He was more interested in having her accompany him to a party. 2 days from now would be Amelia's final day in power, and Craven was planning to awaken the next elder to take over. Tonight's party was to celebrate the occasion, but Selene had no time for a celebration. She only cared about uncovering the werewolves' plans. Using the internet, she tracked down the human's address and decided to confront him. When she found the man, she immediately took control. But before she could ask anything, the sound of werewolves howling echoed from above. Clearly, the werewolves had found their location. Selene fired at the ceiling, but the man, Michael, used the distraction to escape toward the elevator. Selene rushed after him. However, she was too late. She could only watch as Michael got away. To make matters worse, a pack of werewolves was closing in on her. Selene quickly shot 2 of them down, but the numbers were overwhelming. In a desperate move, Selene aimed at the floor beneath her and began shooting wildly, creating a hole big enough to collapse the floor. Michael reached the first floor, but when the elevator doors opened, it was Lucian standing there. At that moment, Selene arrived and didn't hesitate to open fire on Lucian. She had no idea who he truly was yet. Though Lucian was hit by several bullets, he still lunged at Michael, sinking his teeth into his left shoulder. Selene quickly dragged Michael away, urging him to run as fast as they could, but Lucian didn't rush to chase them. His goal had already been achieved. He only needed Michael's blood. Using his inner power, Lucian pushed all the bullets out of his body. Once that was done, he pretended to give chase. Meanwhile, Selene had already started the car and was speeding down the road. However, Lucian was the werewolf king, and once he entered his running state, he quickly caught up to them. He climbed onto the car roof, intending to teach Selene a lesson. With a swift motion, he struck her shoulder with a precise blow. Selene, gritting her teeth against the intense pain, slammed on the brakes, sending Lucian flying off the car roof. She quickly reversed to create some distance, then sped toward him at full throttle, aiming to crush the werewolf under the wheels. But she had underestimated Lucian. Satisfied with what he had accomplished, he allowed them to escape. Michael noticed that Selene was bleeding heavily and feared she wouldn't last much longer. If she passed out, both of them would die in the crash. But Selene was a vampire. She assured him she was fine, that this was just a minor injury. However, the next moment, she fainted. Though Michael grabbed the wheel in time, the car eventually plunged into the freezing river. Michael shattered the car window with his handgun and managed to pull Selene out of the water. As a doctor, he couldn't just let her die. After some effort, Selene regained consciousness, but Michael, exhausted, fell into a deep sleep. During his sleep, he dreamt of strange fragments, memories of Lucian's true past. When werewolves and vampires bite someone, they inherit the original memories of the person. This allows them to transmit information in such a way. Meanwhile, Lucian handed Michael's blood sample to a werewolf scientist. The scientist, overjoyed, eagerly began his experiment. The results were incredibly successful. For centuries, the werewolves had been living in the shadows, waiting for the day they could finally defeat the vampires. Now, they had found a way. Using the blood of special humans, they could mix werewolf and vampire blood to create a new species, a hybrid, part werewolf, part vampire. This new creature would possess the best of both worlds, immune to sunlight, unaffected by silver bullets, and much stronger in combat. Even the vampire elders wouldn't be able to match such a hybrid. Lucian could finally take his revenge. However, the blood sample used for the experiment had already been consumed, so they would need to get more of Michael's blood. But Michael had already been brought back to the ancient castle by Selene. The vampires in the castle were buzzing with rumors, thinking Selene, who had always been indifferent to men, had finally come around. Only Craven was furious. He had long harbored feelings for Selene, even though she had never reciprocated. Now, he felt betrayed. Craven planned to confront his rival, but by the time he reached the room, Michael was gone, running toward the castle gates. 10 minutes earlier, Erica had seized the opportunity while Selene was away talking to Craven. She wanted to get a closer look at the handsome human, but suddenly, Erica's expression changed. She realized that Michael had been marked by the werewolves. Soon, he would transform into one of them. Terrified, Erica hid in the ceiling. Michael, waking up, saw this and was stunned. Was this woman really just an ordinary human? He didn't have time to think further. He quickly jumped out of the window and fled the castle. Craven, furious that his rival had escaped, slapped Selene across the face, warning her that a vampire and a human would never have a future together. Selene, filled with anger, didn't know where to vent it. She could only lash out at the nearest statue. At that moment, the scientist Khan brought good news. He had managed to replicate the werewolf's UV ammunition and created a matching bullet. These new bullets were made from silver nitrate. Upon hitting the target, the silver would immediately seep into the werewolf's blood, and a single shot would be enough to kill them. Selene was impressed with Khan's work, but she also grew more suspicious of how the werewolves could have such advanced technology. She asked Khan if he truly believed that Craven had killed Lucian. Khan replied that it didn't matter what he believed. What mattered was whether the elders believed him. This made Selene even more suspicious of Lucian's death. So, she went to the library to do some research. The records of the vampire-werewolf war were contained in a thick history book. The book claimed that Craven was the only survivor of the war. He had not only destroyed the werewolf's stronghold but also brought back the piece of leather that symbolized Lucian's identity, using it as proof of Lucian's death. With this victory, Craven became famous and was promoted to second-in-command of the Coven. Selene carefully examined the book and confirmed that the leather was indeed Lucian's. But then, she noticed something strange. The necklace Lucian wore, described in the book, looked incredibly familiar. It was the same necklace worn by the werewolf she had encountered in the elevator. Selene felt that things couldn't be this coincidental. She boldly speculated that the werewolf in the elevator had been Lucian. If Lucian was still alive, Craven must be lying. The situation was far more complicated than she had imagined. Unable to wait for the resurrection ceremony in 2 days, she decided to awaken her most trusted elder, Viktor. However, Selene was not yet qualified to perform the awakening ritual. The blood fragments she had sent to Viktor were too disorganized. As a result, Viktor didn't believe Selene's warnings about the family's crisis, nor did he trust that Craven, who had been loyal for centuries, had betrayed them. In truth, Selene's suspicions were correct. Craven had secretly allied with Lucian 600 years ago. They had made a deal. Craven used misdirection to help Lucian escape the battlefield. The piece of leather had been cut off by Lucian himself and given to Craven as a token of their pact. In exchange, Lucian promised to help Craven ascend to the elder's position. They planned to strike during the resurrection ceremony in 2 days, and the outcome of their plan depended on the human, Michael. After escaping the castle, Michael sought help from his colleagues at the hospital, but he wasn't someone you could rely on. He made up an excuse to leave, but when he returned, 2 police officers were following him. A few days ago, the police had visited his colleagues, suspecting Michael was involved in a subway shooting. They had instructed his colleague to report on his whereabouts. Fortunately, Michael noticed them and managed to escape through another exit. With nowhere else to go, he turned to Selene. He needed to know what was really going on. Selene knew that returning to the castle would be like walking into a trap, so she decided to take him to a secret base. As Michael pressed her for answers, Selene revealed everything about the vampires and werewolves. Though Michael didn't want to believe her, the facts were right in front of him. Soon, they arrived at their destination. It was the werewolf interrogation room, a place known only to a few vampires. In the dark of night, with the eerie weather, the two of them couldn't help but open up to each other. Selene shared that she had once been a normal human. It was Viktor who had turned her into a vampire. Viktor had told her that when he found her, she was alone. Her family had been torn apart and devoured by werewolves. This made Selene despise werewolves, which was why she had joined the Death Dealers. After sharing their stories, the two hearts grew closer, but Selene had to leave. She knew Viktor would be searching for her. Before she left, she handed Michael a handgun. With the full moon approaching, Michael was sure to transform into a werewolf. The silver bullets in the gun would stop him from changing. With that, Selene drove off, unaware that she was being watched. It turned out that Craven had overheard her conversation with Viktor. He had learned that Selene was starting to doubt him, and though Viktor had said he didn't believe her, he would surely send someone to investigate. The consequences of this would be disastrous. So, Craven contacted Lucian and decided to move the plan up. Lucian, upon receiving the message, immediately began preparing. He supplied each werewolf with UV ammunition. This was their only chance to strike back. If they failed, the werewolves would never recover. Meanwhile, the arrogant vampires were still enjoying themselves, never suspecting that those lowly werewolves might actually succeed. Selene, seeing how useless the vampires were, was frustrated. But now, she had even more to worry about. She had violated the family's laws by waking Viktor prematurely. Moreover, the awakening ritual was only supposed to be performed by the ruling elders. They were the only ones with the power and right to awaken others. This was not just an ancient rule, it was the very core that kept the vampire family alive. Though Viktor had always treated Selene like his own daughter, this situation was too critical. Selene had to face the consequences of her actions. In 2 hours, Amelia would arrive at the castle, and she would be the one to decide Selene's fate. Afterward, Selene was placed under house arrest, with Craven commanding his subordinates to keep a close watch on her. Clarence sought out Khan, informing him that he didn't need to go and pick up Amelia, he would send Soren instead. Soren had just arrived at the train station when Amelia's special train pulled in. He carefully signaled with a flashlight, and the contact inside the train quickly responded. Once he confirmed everything was in order, Soren breathed a sigh of relief. Unaware of the looming danger, Amelia stepped off the train with an air of calm, but before she could even leave the carriage, the chilling howl of a wolf echoed from above. Her face turned pale. She realized the ambush too late. Wolves appeared like phantoms from all directions, wreaking havoc inside the carriage. Screams and wails filled the station. Soren, the one meant to assist her, watched coldly as his own kind were slaughtered before casually walking away. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Erica pulled the main power switch, plunging the entire building into darkness. Viktor immediately became alert, but Erica's target was clear: Selene. Erica had always been infatuated with Craven, but Craven only had eyes for Selene. Unable to bear it, Erica wanted to make Selene disappear. Selene, sensing something was off, jumped out of the window and vanished into the night. To further fuel Craven's anger and push him to abandon Selene, Erica lied, telling him that Selene had escaped to be with Michael. Furious, Craven ordered Khan to eliminate Michael. The wolves were already in control. They knew Selene would go after Michael, and Michael was their secret weapon to strike back at the vampires. To make sure the plan went smoothly, the wolf scientists discreetly followed them. Just as Selene neared the door, she spotted the wolves outside. She quickly returned to the room, intending to take Michael and flee, but the wolves were already at the door. Selene sprang into action, firing silver nitrate bullets that pierced the walls, taking down several of them. She then smashed the window, urging Michael to jump out. Michael hesitated. The height was too much, but with no other choice, he trusted Selene and jumped. To his amazement, he was unharmed. But then, a police car appeared, and before he could react, 2 officers grabbed him and forced him inside. But tonight was a full moon, and Michael was about to undergo the transformation into a werewolf. His teeth began to grow, and his body started to change. The officers were unfazed, revealing themselves as wolves in disguise. They injected Michael with a tranquilizer, and poor Michael once again fell into the wolves' clutches. Selene, having finished the fight, didn't have time to worry about Michael. She had more pressing matters to handle. Viktor had finally fully recovered, and Craven, upon hearing the news, played the villain's game, falsely accusing Selene of being completely under the wolves' influence and even accusing him of colluding with them. But before Craven could finish speaking, Selene burst in, bringing with her the wolf scientist. Craven panicked. He knew the scientist would expose him. The scientist, seeing that the wolf clan had already won, revealed their grand plan. 5 centuries ago, a village was ravaged by a deadly plague. Everyone died except one man, whose body could convert the virus into something beneficial, making him the first immortal. Later, Kovinos had 3 children. The eldest was bitten by a bat and became the first vampire, now sleeping in the depths of the castle. The second was bitten by a wolf and became a werewolf. The third remained human. The great battle between vampires and werewolves had always been a conflict among brothers. The scientist later discovered that the blood of the third son's descendants could perfectly merge the 2 species' blood and create the powerful ghost wolf. If the blood came from a vampire elder, the ghost wolf would be nearly invincible. This was Lucian's goal. He had already sent Rays to get Amelia's blood, and soon the wolf clan would have an unstoppable force. Upon hearing this, Viktor realized he had misjudged Selene. Meanwhile, Craven had quietly slipped away. Viktor could never have imagined that Craven, who had secretly allied with Lucian, would betray the vampire clan. Enraged, Viktor struck the scientist with a fatal blow. Viktor then personally led an assault on the werewolf den, intending to punish the traitor. Inside the den, Lucian injected Michael's blood into his own veins, waiting for Rays to return with Amelia's blood. As Michael saw the necklace around Lucian's neck, everything from his dreams came together. It was a painful memory of Lucian's past and the catalyst for the vampire-werewolf war. As a werewolf, Lucian was once a slave to the vampires, but he had fallen in love with Viktor's daughter, a forbidden love that couldn't be allowed. Viktor, ashamed of his daughter's relationship, had ordered her execution along with the child she carried. They had used sunlight to burn her alive. Seeing his love die in such a cruel manner shattered Lucian. At that moment, the full moon rose, and in his fury, Lucian transformed into a vicious beast. He grabbed his beloved's necklace and disappeared into the darkness. Knowing he could not defeat Viktor then, he had spent the next 600 years waiting for this day. Then, Craven came to him. Knowing Viktor would never forgive him, he sought Lucian's protection. Shortly after, Selene and her team launched an assault on the wolf den. The wolves fled in fear, knowing they were outmatched. Khan, seeing their retreat, tossed a silver nitrate bomb, finishing off the rest of them. Selene broke off from the team to search for Michael. On her way, she ran into a group of werewolves, but Selene's skills were unmatched. Hearing the fighting, Craven asked if there was another exit. Lucian, furious, yelled at Craven, calling him a coward who wanted to take the Elder's position while hiding from the real fight. Craven, pleased by this, pulled out his gun and ambushed Lucian. A silver nitrate bullet hit Lucian, and even a powerful werewolf couldn't withstand that. Never trust a traitor. By the time Reyes returned with Amelia's blood, it was too late. The wolf clan's hard-fought victory was in ruins. Reyes, consumed by rage, charged at the vampires, determined to fight. Soren wasn't about to back down either. Cracking his whip, Reyes, seeing his face scratched by the whip, became even angrier. He immediately transformed, and Soren, unaware of Reyes' true power, kept using his whip. In an instant, Reyes had torn open Soren's artery. Viktor arrived at the battlefield, and now Reyes, emboldened, wanted a one-on-one duel with the vampire elder, but Viktor swiftly overpowered him, drawing his sword and ending Reyes' life with a single, merciless blow. Meanwhile, Michael remained strapped to a rack, desperate for someone to save him. And then, Selene arrived. The two had grown close during their time together. Selene knew Viktor would never let Michael live, so she made a decision she would escape with him, no matter the cost. But Lucian wasn't dead. He still had a little life left in him. He saw Selene and Michael together and was reminded of his own lost love. Soon, Selene and Michael found the back door, only to face an awkward encounter. Craven was there, preparing to flee. Furious, Craven raised his gun and aimed at Michael. A single shot of silver nitrate would kill him. Selene snapped at Craven, "I want to see Viktor strangle you with his own hands." Craven, enraged, revealed a dark truth. It was Viktor who had killed her family. In order to hide his true nature, the vampire clan was restricted to drinking only animal blood or synthetic blood. But Viktor couldn't resist human blood and had occasionally gone out for a hunt. Selene's family had been his victims. When Viktor had seen Selene, he was reminded of his daughter and transformed Selene into a vampire to keep her by his side. The revelation hit Selene like a sledgehammer, and for the first time, she couldn't accept that she had been living a lie for centuries. Yet, even then, she refused to side with Craven. Craven, frustrated, became more forceful, but just as he was about to make his move, Lucian, still alive, struck him in the leg with a lethal blow. Craven staggered, and Lucian seized the moment, urging Selene to inject Michael with vampire blood. This was the only way to save him now. As Michael weakened, Selene finally gave in, sinking her fangs into his neck. Craven, seeing this, pulled out his knife and aimed it at the couple. Lucian, drawing Craven's attention, taunted, "You may kill me, but my will has already been done." Craven, blinded by anger, delivered the fatal blow to Lucian. Suddenly, Viktor appeared. Realizing the situation was slipping, Craven made a hasty retreat, but Selene was too slow to react. Viktor tossed her aside. Viktor, his rage reaching a boiling point, grabbed Michael and tried to strangle him but found himself unable to. Furious, Viktor threw Michael into a filthy ditch. Then, he turned to Selene, demanding to know where Craven had gone, but Selene didn't answer. Instead, she asked about her family. Viktor admitted his guilt, acknowledging that he had killed them. He believed that granting Selene eternal life was a fair exchange for her family's death. Selene was filled with disgust. She could no longer look at Viktor the same way. At that moment, Michael slowly rose from the murky water, his eyes now completely black, his body contorting into a terrifying shape. The legendary ghost wolf was real. Lucian had defiled the vampire bloodline in his own way, and it had sickened Viktor to the core. The ghost wolf was faster than anything Viktor had ever seen. He couldn't even land a blow. But Michael, still inexperienced, was eventually caught by Viktor. Hearing the commotion, the vampire minions arrived, opening fire on the ghost wolf. Though their shots didn't kill him, they managed to slow him down. They forgot one thing: the ghost wolf had his own allies. Selene leaped into action, easily taking down a few of Viktor's men. Michael tried to land a killing blow on Viktor, but was overpowered. Viktor had Michael pinned by the neck, and no matter how hard Michael struggled, he couldn't break free. Just as Michael was about to lose hope, Selene grabbed Viktor's sword and made a dramatic, graceful leap forward. With one swift motion, Viktor's head was cleaved in half, and he collapsed into the filthy water. Selene had finally avenged her family. A sense of relief washed over her. She picked up Lucian's necklace and, with Michael, set off on their escape, because she knew the vampire clan would never let them go. Inside the castle, the blood of the wolf scientist slowly dripped into the vampire elder's coffin. Soon, he awoke. His eyes now completely black. He had become a ghost wolf. As the vampire progenitor, his power was unimaginable. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.